Investigate. What happened to our country? It used to be that you could go to the supermarket and purchase Land O'Lakes butter. There's the Land of Lakes, there's the Native American, the Indian maiden, offering you the wonderful bounty of the land, in this case, butter from dairy cows. What has this become since Donald Trump left office? Land O'Lakes no longer has the Indian on there. So you could say America took the land but removed the Indian. Comedian Dave Chappelle was targeted by 24 transgender activists who said he should not be allowed to perform a comedy show. Why would transgender activists go after a comedian? Because he's famous and he's well known. They figure that if they punish him and destroy him, then they don't have to intimidate other people from speaking their mind. When did America become so divided that we had to attack our butter and attack comedians? It's because the American people, back in 2016, chose to vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump was viewed as the enemy of the establishment. Traditionally, the establishment would pick our presidential candidates for us. But Americans need to be reminded how wrong they were to elect Donald Trump, how wrong they were not to go along with the candidates selected for them by the powerful. And yet we see here today in 2022, the powerful once again control every aspect of American culture. So why is it that these people are not happy? They run everything, they can cancel anyone, even a black man, in order to show their power. Let's go take a look at this week's headlines. Trump sides with Russia over Brittany Griner. Now, WNBA star Brittany Griner was in Russia on her own dime playing exhibition games, and she chose to bring some form of cannabinoid oil and smuggle it in with her luggage. She was just given a 9-year prison sentence by Russia for bringing drugs into their country. If you look at the long list of news stories, though, the real story, according to the American news media, is that Trump sides with Russia. Trump seems to always be siding with Russia when you look at the headline. But when you go to the actual news story, you find that ex-President Donald Trump did not side with Russia. He simply asked whether we should be exchanging a WNBA star for a Russian arms dealer. The Russian arms dealer that the Biden administration wanted to exchange for Brittany Griner was the basis of the Nicolas Cage movie Lord of War. And Trump simply said, why do this? It's the same with the story from February, where every news outlet said Trump sides with Putin. But if you went and watched the actual interview Donald Trump did, Donald Trump was noting that Putin made fools of the American news media, like when Putin claimed he was simply engaging on the side of democracy in invading Ukraine. Trump never sided with Putin. Trump never sided with Russia. But it's important for the American news media to control every aspect of every news story, because they want to show you that you were wrong to ever vote for Donald Trump. And I'll give you a chilling example. This is author Daniel Silva. His recent book, The Cellist, was solely about the fact that 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election were not only wrong for their choice in voting for Trump, but the 74 million people who voted for Trump were evil. Silva actually has a Trump supporter shoot the hero of his novel, Gabriel Allon, the Israeli super spy and defender of the State of Israel. Silva and his CNN wife wrote this book to make it clear that to oppose the Democratic Party was not only morally wrong, but ethically wrong. That you could not dare oppose the state the next time you vote in an election. Because if you do, someone will actually write a novel about how evil you were to cast your vote for someone that the state did not approve of. And this permeates all reporting in America. Look at the recent news here. President Joe Biden tested positive for COVID and then traveled all around the country and the White House without a mask. There was not one news story from the network news, the Washington Post, and New York Times saying that Biden was in any way wrong for doing this. Yet when Donald Trump did the same thing and returned to work after testing positive for COVID, every news story was Donald Trump was a super spreader. Donald Trump was going to kill hundreds of people, millions of people, from his own personal bad example. And reporters got rich off of false reporting like this. But these reporters would not get rich reporting about Joe Biden in the same way. The reason is the state identified Trump as a threat to the power of those who run the state. Let's take a look at what Joe Biden's America looks like in 2022. This is a series of videos by someone, probably a black man, who lives in Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia, the state of Pennsylvania. Now remember, Philadelphia delivered the votes for Joe Biden after the 2020 presidential election was over. After election night, Pennsylvania spent days counting new ballots, additional ballots, which were magically discovered in order to deliver Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and the whole state of Pennsylvania to Joe Biden. Let's see what the result of Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer winning control of our country means in 2022. Kind of jealous. 1.5 million views. He doesn't say one thing. He lets the imagery and the sounds speak for themselves. When I first saw this, look at that woman over on the right. When I first saw this, I thought we were watching a hyper-realistic virtual reality video game showing a zombie apocalypse. No, this is President Joe Biden's America in 2022. This is the legacy of the Democratic Party winning control of our nation, winning the culture war, winning control of all media and all information. Look at the horror here of all Democrat rule. This is what the Democratic Party wishes your city to look like. This is what the Democratic Party wishes your children to be exposed to as they walk to school in their little backpacks. Imagine your children walking to elementary school past this every day. Kensington Avenue, according to the viewer comments on this video, was populated by Irish immigrants 1 century ago. Can you imagine being an Irish immigrant in 1920 and being shown this footage? You would have thought the world had ended. And in fact, if George Soros funded prosecutors and politicians and state attorneys get into office as they did in recent elections, this is what America looks like. Walking around a Democrat city is fun and informative, but there are serious news stories that I wish I had time to go into, so I'll just have to mention them in brief here. This was an op-ed from the Asia Times published back in May. Biden and the Democrats pivot to proxy war. While Biden remains steadfast there will be no boots on the ground in Ukraine, U.S. paramilitaries are effectively already there. And this is the second part of a 3-part series. I'd recommend reading all parts. Joe Biden assembled his foreign policy team for his administration based on the failed foreign policy experts who destroyed Syria and created the Syrian civil war. The same experts who presided over creating millions of Muslim refugees who streamed into Europe from North Africa and Syria. These same experts have gotten us into a completely artificial and unnecessary war in Ukraine. Here's a story about how Biden's domestic team has contrived means of using the power of the federal government to indoctrinate your children. The Biden administration has upped Wilson's game. First is the overlay of gender and LGBTQ plus identification. More broadly, the administration is leveraging the federal government's power as the largest purchaser of private sector goods and services to unlawfully force businesses to submit, and federal grants and contracts to unlawfully coerce educational institutions to adopt Department of Education employment processes and curricula, thereby assuring the indoctrination of future generations in the progressive dogma of so-called anti-racism, critical race theory, CRT, gender fluidity, and anti-Semitism. This week came the positive news that a governor suspended a state attorney who had pledged not to enforce the law of the state, in this case, the state of Florida. State attorneys have a duty to prosecute crimes as defined in Florida law, not to pick and choose which laws to enforce based on his personal agenda. State Attorney Andrew Warren responds after suspension of Governor DeSantis. Well, actually, Andrew Warren, it doesn't matter whether you respond or not. The law is in the hands of the governor, not you. This person won his office because he received foreign money from George Soros and other PACs that came with foreign money outside of our country. I'd like to close with another very long article that I recommend you read, Why We Lost Trust in the Expert Class. Elite experts and degreed professionals massaged and warped their knowledge to serve ideological masters rather than the truth. Sri Lanka may be the first modern nation to adopt deliberate policies that have led to mass hunger and bankruptcy. The government, for a variety of reasons, listened to foreign advocates of back-to-nature organic farming, specifically outright abandonment of highly effective synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. The result was endemic crop failure. Cash crops for export failed. Widespread hunger followed. Without foreign exchange, it became impossible to import key staples like food and fuel. Sri Lanka once had a per capita income twice that of nearby India. Now it cannot feed or fuel itself. Unfortunately, its incompetent government trusted radical environmental advisors, many of them foreign experts. Sri Lanka believed it could become the woke darling of the environmental, social governance movement, and that way draw in unlimited Western woke investment. These are the people who consider themselves the experts. And as Hansen asks, is it any wonder why the Western public has lost confidence in their degreed and credentialed elites? These people caused untold damage to their country and fellow citizens. They disgraced their profession, they tarnished the scientific community, and sold their souls to ideologues. I'll provide links to these stories in the video's description. But all of it ties back to a corporation frightened off of taking a Native American off of their package of butter. This is the America that Joe Biden's Democrats have created. Investigate for yourself when you see a news story of people attempting to change America's culture, and recognize that the people lying to you in hundreds of news outlets across the country on your local and national news, they don't work for you. Who do these people work for? Do they work for a foreign oligarch funding the takeover of America? And what is the purpose of this takeover? It's not to make us better people. It's to destroy America's influence in the world so that we no longer stand in the way of those who wish to replace America as the world's last superpower. Thank you.